Hey, it's editing Jans. Please excuse the constant change of lighting in this video. Apparently there was a lot of sun and clouds going on in front of my window while I was filming this. It's really annoying, but I can't change it anymore, so I guess we'll just have to deal with it. Yeah, that's it. Enjoy the video. Hi, and welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while, but I thought that today I could talk about a topic that's actually one of my favorite topics ever at the moment, but I've never talked about it in a YouTube video, and that's languages and language learning. I like language, I like learning new languages, I want to learn more languages, and I have some opinions I'd like to share with you. Also, I asked you guys out there what kinds of videos you would like to see from me, and someone said that I should talk about my studies and what I'm doing with my life, so I guess that also fits well. I study English and Scandinavian studies, so the majority of what I learn there is about language in some way. I mean, Scandinavian studies is not only language, it's also about cultural or literary studies and stuff like that, but a very big part is also learning at least one Scandinavian language. In my case, that's Norwegian and Icelandic. Norwegian was my first Scandinavian language, so it's kind of my main focus, but last semester I also started taking Icelandic classes, but that's a little complicated. I'm not gonna talk too much about that here. And English studies, I guess that's self-explanatory, it's English. I guess I've always been kind of a language person, like in school German or English. French only partly has always been the stuff that I was good at. Oh well, okay, I never did extremely well in school, but at least I did okay at these things. Let's say German and English were my less hated school subjects. I remember that I was always kind of excited when I started to learn a new language in school, and when I was 10 or maybe 11, I was like, I want to learn at least 5 languages because I thought it was really cool, and then French happened. I started to learn French in 6th grade and I was really excited for it, but then I had a teacher who I absolutely hated and who hated me, and that kind of destroyed it for me. I'd say I had a really difficult relationship to French in school. Overall, I learned French in school for 8 years, and over these years I had a couple of very bad teachers. I mean, it's probably unfair to say that all of them were bad teachers. Some of them were, but with some it was more of a personal problem, I guess. But yeah, French and me started off very badly, but then in middle school I had a different teacher, and that was when it got better and I started to like French again. But then after that I had a very bad teacher again, and I literally forgot everything during that 1 year. And then in my last 3 years I had an okay teacher, but I had already forgotten everything and I had literally no motivation to catch up with it, which is why French was my worst subject when I graduated. And after that, despite learning this language for 8 fucking years, I couldn't say or understand anything in French except for j'ai oublié mes devoirs. That means I forgot my homework. I use that one a lot. And by the way, I don't blame only my French teachers for this. I mean, partly I do because some of them really sucked, but I'm aware that a lot of this was also due to my own laziness. Of course, I definitely should have tried more to catch up if I had really wanted to learn this language at the time. But the thing I do blame school for is that it really made me lose the fun and the enthusiasm for learning in general, but especially for learning languages, because that was a thing I really enjoyed in the beginning. I also had Spanish for a year, but I quit because it only annoyed me, and the only reason I didn't quit earlier was because my mom didn't allow me to. I don't know anything in Spanish, but I still had to sit there for 1 year, 3 hours a week and be completely exhausted, and it was supposed to be voluntarily. Fortunately, it wasn't that bad with English because I had always at least decent English teachers, but my, I don't know, enthusiasm for the English language only really came back after school as well. And this thing with French makes me genuinely sad now because these 8 years were completely wasted. A while ago I started to learn French and Duolingo again, just to improve my skills a little bit. I still wouldn't say I speak French, but maybe my understanding is getting a little bit better, because I feel like even doing this tiny Duolingo minimum every day brings back some of the stuff I learned in middle school. Maybe someday I'll get there, I don't know. But yeah, that's on me and language learning in school. And I mean, that could have just been the end of the story for me. But a while after I graduated, I started to get a bit worried that I might unlearn English more and more, because now I didn't even have these few lessons a week where I was forced to speak English. And that was also the time where I started to become friends with more people outside of Germany, so I wanted to keep improving my English because I had to use it more. That's when I started to make my videos in English, just to keep in practice, and also because it's cool to reach people from all over the world like this. And simultaneously, I also started to get interested in Norwegian and Norway and basically Scandinavia in general. That started, guess what, because I watched Scum and was just obsessed with it, still am. But to be honest, I hate when people assume that I study Scandinavian studies just because of Scum, because that's simply not true. Why would I study anything only because of a TV show? That would be really stupid, and if I had done that, I probably wouldn't be studying it anymore. But you can definitely say that Scum kinda started all of this, and above all brought back my interest for other languages. Because I watched this show and thought, wow, this language sounds really cool, I want to learn it. And then I did what everyone does nowadays when they want to learn a language. I downloaded Duolingo. And so I started to get more and more fascinated by the Norwegian language, and that hasn't stopped ever since, and here we are now. It's just a really great language. And because I wanted to learn this language so badly, I started to watch more Norwegian shows and movies and started to listen to Norwegian music. I just tried to learn as much as possible about Norway, and at some point this interest expanded to all of Scandinavia. And I have to say the Duolingo thing in combination with consuming a lot of Norwegian media worked pretty well at first. This video is not sponsored by Duolingo, by the way, but like after a couple of months I already understood a lot. Obviously speaking is a little harder, but in my opinion language learning apps are a good and easy way to just start somewhere. Duolingo is just what I personally use because it works well for me, but that probably also depends on your target language. For example, Norwegian is just not that difficult or complicated to learn in general, especially not for a German speaker, I guess, because there's some relation. So I don't know, use whatever the fuck you want. But yeah, then I started to study Scandinavian studies because I didn't have a better plan after my year of voluntary service, and apparently I want to end up unemployed. Basically, I just chose English because I needed a second subject. So I guess that's how I ended up here. I actually wanted to do something else instead of English, but I didn't get in, and then during my first semester I wasn't so happy, but now I'm okay with my choice, so we're good. But don't you dare to ask me what I'm gonna do with this degree, I have no idea. And that's on my whole studying situation. I'm extremely glad that I rediscovered this interest, especially because it was such a coincidence. I'm in my 4th semester right now. This August I will go to Norway for a year to study there, and then when I come back I will finish my degree, and I just couldn't be happier with the whole situation. And especially with learning Norwegian, I feel like for the first time in my life, I'm really ambitious with something. Like, for the first time I want to be really good at something only for myself, just because I fucking love it. I don't even know, I just never wanted to learn anything this much before, and that's why every progress I make with Norwegian makes me so incredibly happy and proud, because I don't know, it just feels good and it's so cool to be passionate about something. But I don't only make this video to babble about how much I love Norwegian, I mean, kinda, but not only. There's one thing about language learning, and especially about learning English, that I need to rant about. And that's how judging people often are towards people who don't speak perfect English. Because that was the reason why for a long time I was also very insecure about speaking English. I mean, I've always been kind of shy when it came to talking to native speakers of my target language. For example, when we had a native speaker in school come to our classes, I was too embarrassed to talk in front of them. I don't even know why, honestly, because especially native English speakers seem to be very understanding when you make mistakes. They're all like, yeah, I know, English is weird, we don't get it either. At least the people I met were always more impressed by people's English skills than they were annoyed by their mistakes or something. Maybe that's because native English speakers often don't learn another language that well in school, because I guess there's less of a need to, because most people already speak English anyway, so they never get to practice it. Maybe they're also just more used to talking to non-native speakers and don't care anymore. And because of that, I'm actually kind of glad now that English is not my first language, because I learned English anyway and I'm pretty fluent. I understand basically everything, but I'm also fluent in German because I am German, it's my mother tongue. Like, who knows if I would speak a second language this fluently if it wasn't English? Probably not, because I wouldn't have to use it that much. And also because I'm lazy. So just in case you're one of those people who wish that English was their first language, try to see it that way. Anyway, what I wanted to say is that in my experience, these people who are judging other people for their English are mostly not native speakers, but Germans, for example. I mean, I'm sure that's not only a German problem, but I'm talking from my own experience. A couple of years ago there was this time where it felt to me like all of a sudden everyone around me spoke perfect English. When I started high school, or like the German equivalent of high school, it felt like everyone in my class except for me had been in the US for an exchange year or something. That wasn't even true. There were maybe 1 or 2 people, so I have no idea why I thought that in the first place. And also, just because you spend some time abroad, that doesn't mean that you're all of a sudden a fluent English speaker. I don't know. But also many of my mutuals on Twitter started to tweet in English, and my friends started to speak English all the time, and I don't know, there were so many people around me who were so vain about their English skills. Like, yeah, obviously your English is pretty good for you, but no reason to shit on other people who are not as fluent as you. Many people really made fun of someone when they pronounced something wrong or didn't know a certain word or something, and I still don't get why you would do that. Like, it's so unnecessary. And I'm talking about people who were usually nice, people I was friends with, but who just became arrogant assholes when it came to speaking English. And even though it never happened to me directly, that someone made fun of my English specifically, it made me really insecure, even though there was literally no reason for that. Like, for a student my age, who was, by the way, still learning and improving, my English was perfectly fine. But the reason why this is such a mean thing to do to people who are learning a language is that in order to learn a language and get better and more fluent, you need to speak it. And if you discourage someone so much that they avoid speaking, they can't improve. It's kind of a vicious circle. Oh, and another thing that people get very arrogant about are accents. You have an accent that reveals that English is not your first language. Shame on you. How dare you? I think especially German accents are made fun of or even looked down on a lot. Again, in my experience, mostly not by native English speakers, because they mostly just think it's cute or funny or whatever. They just don't care. But Germans love to shit on other people for their German accent. I'm speaking about German accents here because, again, I'm a native German speaker, so that's what I experience, but I'm sure you can also apply this to other languages and accents. And I know that I have a German accent. You don't need to tell me. It's because I am German. I'm not even saying that you're never ever allowed to laugh a little about some accents. Like, they can be funny and it's okay to think that, as long as it's not in a condescending way. For example, I love speaking German to people who are learning it because, yeah, accents are kind of cute, but also it's really interesting to me to see how someone else learns my native language, because they notice stuff that I never even think about because I'm so used to it. I love that. Like, if you're learning German, please speak to me. But yeah, because accents are so often seen as something negative, I also thought for a long time that it was a really bad thing to have one, and that's another thing that made me insecure. But having an accent as a non-native speaker is kinda normal and nothing to be ashamed of. And it also doesn't mean that you're bad at the language. Like, you can be a good and fluent speaker and still have an accent. Language learning is not about perfection, it's about being able to communicate. I'm able to use English for everything that's relevant in my life, so why should my accent matter then? Also, accents can be fun. In a way, they show your background, they're a part of who you are. I personally love speaking and listening to people with different accents because I think it's really interesting to see why they pronounce certain things differently, or maybe also use some words more often depending on their first language. For example, classic, many Germans can't pronounce the English TH just because that sound doesn't exist in German. Or Norwegians tend to use the word keen a lot because it's also very common in Norwegian apparently. I actually think I hardly ever heard someone who wasn't Norwegian use that word. But small things like that always connect the way you speak a foreign language to your native language, and I think that's really cool. And that's why I'm no longer ashamed of my accent. Though of course that does mean that I'm not trying to pronounce stuff the right way, because obviously I want people to understand me. And I also noticed that the more I speak, the less obvious becomes my accent, because my mouth gets more used to producing the sound of the language I'm speaking, you know? For instance, take this video and compare it to my first English video 2 years ago. There's at least a slight difference, I think. But even if it had stayed the way it was back then, that would have been okay because I was able to use this language and that's all that counts. And I actually think it's kinda ridiculous when people desperately try to have an accent that isn't natural for them. My favorite example are those people who try so hard to have a British accent. I had a girl in my class who seemed to think that she really ruled at this. She was always like, I prefer the British pronunciation actually. I just think it's so cool, innit? Sorry, I'm really bad at British accents. But she pissed me off so much because you could tell that she thought that she was a better person than everyone else in the room just because of her perfect accent. That wasn't even that perfect, by the way. Like, that was the embarrassing thing. It was still pretty clear that she was German. Not that that's a bad thing, I think I've made that clear now, but it was funny because she was so proud of not sounding German. I don't know, I think that's a phenomenon you see especially often with people who try very hard to sound British. Doesn't even matter if they succeed or not. But to me it often makes them sound kinda arrogant. I'm not talking about people with an actual British accent, I'm talking about a very special way of imitating it. Like, we get it, you watched a lot of Dan and Phil or Sherlock or something and now you're convinced that you're basically British, and I'm sorry to break it to you, but you don't sound authentic. I think if I tried to do that, it would just feel like self-denial in a way, because no matter how much I like British accents, speaking this way just doesn't feel natural to me. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with using an accent you like as a template or something to learn. I also do that in Norwegian, for example, because in Norwegian dialects are very present things. So in the beginning, our teacher sort of told us to just choose one dialect as an orientation. So of course, I'm more oriented towards the dialects I hear the most. For example, in my case, I started to learn Norwegian by watching Skam, which takes place in Oslo, so I kinda got used to speaking more like the Eastern dialects. And I don't know, maybe some people in my Norwegian class think that's embarrassing or annoying too, but what I want to say is that I get that when starting to learn a language, you choose the variant that you like the best. I just think that some people are trying a little bit too hard, and that annoys me. Yeah, that was my little rant about language because I felt like it. If you agree, feel free to rant with me in the comments. If you disagree, I'm happy to discuss with you. And yeah, maybe tell me about your language learning experiences, or about your accents, or which words are hard to pronounce for you, or whatever. I always love to hear that stuff. And yeah, I have my social media linked in the description in case you want to follow me or something, and here are also some other videos and you can subscribe and everything, and then I'd say goodbye. Take care of yourself.